African American women have problems with men, with ourselves, with each other. Exchange their vagina in exchange for love. What you've been taught is a lie. I want you young and dumb and full of their cum. Hello knockouts, Tonya Tko here, and I'm a self-love specialist from TonyaTko.com. My mission is for you to love yourself and each other. Today we're going to be talking about Black women's sexuality and how we've become disconnected from that here in America, as well as 2 ways that we can reconnect. If you have ever thought that the way a woman dresses determines the type of respect that she's going to get, then this video is for you. The other day I put up a video about the beef that Azalea is having with Cardi B, where she says that she feels that she's a caricature of Black culture. There were a few comments that really just kind of weighed in on my chest, and I felt like it was my duty to make this video, to have this conversation with you all. So this is going to be a big sister conversation. Pull up your chair, put in your earphones, start washing the dishes, do whatever you need to do, because this is going to be a long conversation, and we're going to discuss this until we get to the bottom of it, as well as at the end give you 2 ways to flip this around for yourself. The first comment that I want to highlight says, people are going to think that she represents Black women and Black culture, and that is the issue. Then the same person comes back to say, entire societies get the wrong idea about Black people through the media. This is where foreigners get their information about us. And then she goes on to say, Black people should care what others think of them. It determines whether or not they're going to get respect. Black women have a horrible reputation, and women like this make it worse. Then she goes on to talk about how the Chinese government has banned rap music, etc. I want this to be a discussion. So I want you to post your feelings and your thoughts in the comments, and I'm going to come into the comments and I'm going to converse with you all too, because this is a really huge issue, and I hear men saying stuff like this, and then worst of all, I hear women impounding upon other women with this idea, and it's really painful for me. So let's go to the second comment. Is from a young lady and she says, have you seen Cardi B with her pregnant belly, tongue sticking out, twerking on the stage at Coachella? I kind of agree with Azalea Banks. All right, so I want you all to just let that just simmer in on you for a moment, and then let's jump right in. Okay, here we go. All right, number 1, before I jump into it, let me just say this. I considered myself to be African American and Caribbean American, but mainly since I was born here in America, I consider myself to be African American. And it wasn't until I was having the conversation with a really close friend of mine who's a Black Dominican woman, an Afro-Latina, and she basically said, you know, I'm Latina, and people expect for Latinas to be really sexy. They consider us to be really spicy. And she's like, and I embrace my sexiness and my spiciness. An idea that she came into contact with as a child, and as she grew into a woman, she just grew more and more into her femininity. I think that this is part of the reason that a lot of us African American women in this country have problems with men, with ourselves, with each other. It's because of this disconnection that we feel from our femininity and from our sexuality. And I hope that this video can help to alter some of our mind frames about sexuality and feminine essence and our full feminine glory. It wasn't until I started speaking with her that I started realizing the differences that I experience as a Caribbean American young lady coming of age in this country. Being raised in a household where we whine our waist and juke our hips and dip down low and walk up the body and... Okay, I'm sorry. You know what? I started getting carried away. Excuse me for a moment. Let me regroup. Okay. So I thought about the difference between being raised in a household where hip movement and swaying and sensuality and all of that was never discouraged, where I was never lambasted for dancing too sexually, being too evocative. I was never lambasted for those things, and it never penetrated into my being that those things were wrong. And so I've lived my life under the guise of the beauty of just ritmo and just rhythm and just soca and calypso and it being so sweet and just excuse me again, I'm sorry, when I start thinking of calypso, I can't anymore. Soca, oh Lord. Okay. What happened in this country? This is a much larger conversation about what it means to be black. Where did black come from? And how did we get into all of these different parts of the world? Because people are saying Cardi B is not black, but then somebody like Beyonce is. When there's obvious a mixing of European genes inside of both of these women, what makes one black and the other not, you know, besides one speaking a different language? And I think that there's something that happens with black Americans when they hear another black person speaking another language, and for some reason, particularly Spanish, because I don't hear people saying that Haitians are not black. You know, or sometimes I hear them saying Africans are not black. And it's like, I think that the word black has become synonymous with African American, but we don't have the copyright to African DNA. It's like during the slave trade, we were taken out of Africa and we were taken to different parts of the world. So there are black people who speak Portuguese, there are black people who speak French, there are black people who speak Spanish. But I think because of the narrative that this country speaks about Spanish-speaking people, I think that we have this animosity towards Spanish-speaking people. And also with the colorism that existed inside of the islands, where people started thinking that they were better if they were lighter, and that they were not so good if they were darker. And then a lot of the separation that existed between Afro-Latinos and African Americans. So the Afro-Latinos did not want to identify with black Americans, and they felt that having their culture and their language made them better. And I think that in response, African Americans just have kind of revolted against that, where they're like, well, you know what, well, forget you and your language. And I think that there's also this animus that exists on the inside because we have very little connection to our African roots. We don't have the language, the religion, the customs, the culture, the food. We don't have those things in America. What we have is a hodgepodge of what's been created on this soil. Because in this country, I've heard the sentiment that you could either be sexual or respectable. And I want to get down to the bottom of where this comes from. Why is it that there are culturally some black women who embrace their sexuality, who exude it, who bask and revel in the glory of their feminine divinity? Why is it that there's some women who do that and some women who don't? So for the people who think that the way that you dress determines the type of respect that you receive, that's a thing called respectability politics, where we punish people and we come down hard on them because we say, well, because you're sexy or because you're sexual, you won't get respect. When you see a person who's scantily clad and you're like, you know what, you're going to get disrespected because of that, and you deserve to get disrespected, or you're going to get raped. Or when I see you dressing better, when I see you dressing like a lady, I'll treat you like a lady. Or how do you expect to get treated like a lady when you're not dressing like one? So let's go into this, right? Let's say a person were naked. I mean, so a person could be scantily clad with things pushing up and squeezing in and popping out and spilling over and all that type of stuff, right? So a person can be wearing scant clothing. But let's say a person was wearing no clothing at all. Does that mean that they should be raped, that a person should come up to them and be like, oh, okay, because you have no clothing on, I'm going to stick my penis in you, or I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to disrespect you because of that? No. How long have we been feeling that the amount of respect that we get is determined by us and how we behave, how we dress, how we speak, rather than the person who is either giving or withholding that respect? Far too often we place the onus on us to get another person's respect, rather than the onus on that person to give respect based on what's inside of them. So that we don't have to sit here feeling bad and in trepidation because we feel like we're not getting a certain amount of respect from a person, so that we change who it is that we are. We live in the prison of other people's perception, hoping that maybe one day, if we crunch ourselves down small enough and ball ourselves up tight enough and live our lives constricted enough, that these people will finally respect us. They're calling the police on lawyers, on real estate agents, on people who are just sitting in a place, dressed in suits because they're black. It has nothing to do with what it is that you have on the outside. It has to do with that person's own inner biases, prejudices, and inner discriminatory practices. That's on that person. And so I wanted to talk about what's the difference that exists here in America versus other black islands and countries. Did you know that it was written into the law books that you could not rape a black woman because we were thought of as being so lascivious, so lustful, and such Jezebel spirit that it was impossible to rape a black woman because a black woman is so sexual that she was the one who actually called forward for the rape, that she was the one who was quote unquote asking for it, that the male had to give in to his desires because she was just so intoxicatingly erotic that it was impossible to rape her because his actions were dependent on who it is that she was as a female being. I think that that's one of the things. And I think Christianity is the other one. Correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys can talk about this in the comments with me. It's my theory that here in America, what's unique that didn't exist in the Caribbean is that, one, we were outnumbered here in this country where we were taught to worship in this book with the white Jesus, without the counterbalance of being able to make some of these saints black or seeing ourselves in the image of this white Jesus, and not being able to incorporate, like inside the other islands, they were able to incorporate the saints and all of these other things with African gods and then come up with a different sect of their own religion. But I think there's something about being in this country, being forced to follow Christianity in its puritanical form, where sexuality is frowned upon inside of the Bible. There's this word that's been stuck inside of my mind, immaculate conception. What do you think of when you hear immaculate conception? What is immaculate? Immaculate is clean, which means a person being able to conceive in a clean way, you know, without all that messiness of penis and sperm. So there's like the purest woman, the only woman who was deemed to have been worthy of giving birth to a God or to a Christ is a woman who was not sullied. She was a virgin. She had not been sullied by sex. So her conception was immaculate. I think that these puritanical views, along with being outnumbered in this country and being stripped of all of our customs and cultures, our food, our rhythm, all of that, being stripped of all of that, and being thought of as these lascivious, lustful beings that are just so deviant that they can't help themselves from just being so wildly sexual. I think the shame associated with that is what disconnected us from our femininity, from our feminine essence and our feminine glory. Like if you look at this girl's comment, have you seen Cardi B with her pregnant belly, tongue sticking out, twerking on the stage at Coachella? As if there's something wrong with that. We have several chakras for a reason, and every chakra is important. From the root all the way up to the crown, all of them are important. We have this imbalance where we don't want to acknowledge what's going on down below the belt. It's dirty, it's sinful, it's carnal, it's of the flesh. It should be hidden, it should be squelched, it should be subdued. When there's healing in activating that root chakra, that's what grounds us to this earth. Part of the dysfunction exists when we shame that part. And I think that that's part of the reason why Black American women end up with so much fibroid tumors in their uteruses. Let's just jump into some statistics. It's noted that almost half of all African American women in this country will be sexually assaulted in her lifetime, with the majority of those sexual assaults happening under the age of 18. So that we have a lot of molestation. I think the number is 40% of all Black girls have been molested. So we have this molestation that exists inside of the Black community. We have this shame that exists around sex, coupled with sexually dysfunctional ideas, and then disconnection from our feminine essence, being ashamed of being rooted and grounded, and being ashamed and disconnected from our sexual essence because of the dysfunction and the deviance that exists in this country, where we are disconnected from that which is beautiful and divine. It's like working those hips in a twerking. How many of you can still twerk outside of your 20s? Twerking is inherently African. That's one portion of our culture that just exists in our DNA, that shows up in our dance. In this country, it's been bastardized. If you look at twerking in the American Black female, All the concentration is just in the hip area. There's no overall choreography. There's no incorporation of other body parts into it. It's just basically a woman bending over, gyrating, and pumping her hips in the air, which is something that I can see is very appealing visually for males. However, as a woman, is it a balanced movement here in America? So like if you look at African dance, they'll incorporate the buttock twerking in there, but it's a part of a much larger dance. So it's a part of choreography, it's a part of beauty, it's a part of femininity, it's a part of symmetry with the whole body. But it's like here in this country, there's this laser focus. It all can't be concentrated in just one area. Female sexuality is powerful. Black female sexuality, mother of all civilization, creator of all other life forms, is even more powerful. I think that's part of the reason that people are so determined to contain black female sexuality, to squelch it, to water it down, to stomp it out, because it's so powerful. We as women have such an ability to alter the face of the world that we live in through just our essence of being female alone. That feminine essence, that feminine power, that feminine divinity is so potent. We have been taught to ignore that energy, to actually turn away from that energy and to be ashamed of it, so that when we see a woman doing one of the most feminine things possible, I was going to say embarazada, but filled with human life inside of her, that we would feel ashamed of her moving her backside and twerking. Why? This is how she became pregnant. We're taught to think of sex as so dirty that we don't want to admit that we have it. And this is the secret right here. Let me tell you guys a secret. When I was in my 20s, I lived in Miami and I had a chance to live with and hang out with some white girls. And I was astonished by what I saw. Astonished. These girls were on a mission. When I say, oh God, they were on a mission. They were out there sexing almost every night. Different men, sometimes 2 and multiple men at a time, with no shame. They would come stumbling back in the morning, still partially drunk, with their eyeliner was smeared down their face. And as we grew, I had a chance to watch these white girls as they went back off into their lives. They washed themselves up, washed the lint and the dirt out of their hair, put on some proper clothes, and then the next thing you know, nobody ever knew that they were out there sucking and bucking all over South Beach, Miami. And would you believe every single one of those girls ended up married, with children, housewives, and soccer moms, driving around their little kitties to their sporting and art functions. And I was blown away. I was blown away because the game has been twisted, and I think that we African American women don't really understand. I think that we're just so disconnected that we really just don't get it. There's so many of us out there who our sexuality is not our own. From the time that we start to come into ourselves as young prepubescent, 9, 10 years old, we are taught and we learn that our bodies are not our own. First of all, our bodies belong to our parents. And in some man that exists out there in the future, our husband who we don't even know. So that we have to keep ourselves pious and clean and pure and virginal for him. Forget whatever sexual urges and desires that we may have, whatever type of sexual development that we may want. And too many of us are taking instruction from men who they themselves don't know what the hell they're doing. We're taking instruction from men where we're like, oh, I'm going to crunch down small. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure that nobody. And the thing is that it's black women left holding the bag. And think that somewhere down at the end of the rainbow is some prize for them. that they're going to win the husband, that they're going to win the good life, that they're going to be rewarded for all of their sexual sacrifice. And I'm here to tell you that there's no prize at the end of the rainbow. The only thing that you do is you deny yourself the sexual, you deny yourself the sexual joy, the sexual experience, and the sexual technique. Let me tell you something. Because at the end of the day, yes, men in their minds, they want you to be virginal. Yes, that's genetic. From back in the days before there were DNA tests, the only way to know that the baby was yours is to get with a woman that seemed like she was most likely to stay with you and only you. So it's genetic for them to want you to be virginal. But what I'm saying is that it's not practical. I want you to do something for me, ladies. Do this. Think back to high school. Think back to high school. All of the girls who were quote unquote fast or quote unquote sluts, where are they now? Where are they now? Are they like the quote unquote fast girls or the sluts from my high school, where every single last one of them ended up married? Who are the ones who are not married? The pious girls, the virginal girls, the girls who were saving it and waiting to sell and exchange their virginity to some man in exchange for marriage. Those are the ones who I see alone, the ones who got the game twisted. Because they think that life is one way when it's really another way. And I want you to take it from me. Listen, I'm not telling you to go out there and just give it away at a man's whim. No. What I'm saying is take control of your own sexuality. Take control of your body and know that it is your body. Enjoy the experiences for you. Far too often, listen, you guys know that I'm a coach, and far too often I talk to women who are thinking that they can exchange their vagina in exchange for love, in exchange for commitment, in exchange for a person's fidelity, and you cannot. You cannot. You can exchange your vagina in exchange for penis. You can exchange your vagina in exchange for orgasm. There are far too many of us who are living in this imbalance where we think, oh, if only I sacrifice myself like I've been taught. What I'm telling you is that what you've been taught is a lie. Listen to your big sister. Listen to me. What you've been taught is a lie. Is a lie. All of the sluts are married. Own your sexuality. Learn what makes you happy. 75% of women are non-orgasmic. They've never had a vaginal orgasm, ever. Learn your body. Learn what you like. Yes, and you know what? There will be some women who maintain their virginalness who will end up winning the quote-unquote prize of marriage from some man who demanded their virginity. And I'm telling you, that's not too much of a prize. What you're actually winning is a man who does not want you to know your body or know how to please yourself or him. He wasn't keeping himself virginal, but he wants you to come into the relationship never having known another man's penis, because he wants to be able to do or give whatever it is that he wants to do or give in this relationship or not, without you knowing the difference of what real pleasure feels like, without you knowing anybody but him. They have this thing, and we're going to talk about why men hate their penises in another video. How much longer are we going to be taking instruction from men who they themselves are not intuitive? That they're telling us how we should live our lives according to their rule, and it's not working. If it were working, every woman who's pious would be married and happy. Far too many of them, yes, marriage is the goal, but then what happens after the marriage? Are you happy? Far too many men are talking about divorce rates being lower before when women didn't have any options, and that's what they like. They want you to have to depend on them no matter what it is that they do, no matter how much cheating or beating they do. They want you to have to stay with them. They want you to have nothing to compare them to. They want you young and dumb and full of their cum. And the worst part is that we black women are left here holding the bag. We're left here holding the bag. Because we hear all of these messages. Oh, your hair is this, your lips are that, your skin color is this, you're that, your big butt, your twerking is nasty, you're this, the that, the this, the that. And then what ends up happening? I'll never forget when I saw this weightlifting competition. Everybody on the damn stage was brown. I couldn't understand what the blood clot was going on. Everybody was brown. I was like, what? It was like they painted themselves up in this brown solution so that their muscles can stand out more. Now we got people getting all their lip injections and butt implants and all this, that, and the other. And then they're like, ha, gotcha, gotcha. It was really cute after all. I'll never forget when I read this article. It was in like Cosmo or Mademoiselle back in the days. And it was like, J-Lo, how did J-Lo get rid of her devastating derriere? That was the word. I remember reading that and I was like, devastating? The hell are you talking about? I was like, so it's like they spent a lot of time trying to convince us that big butts are awful, big butts are this, we should like flat butts, we should like flat butts, we shouldn't like hips, we shouldn't. They spent so much time trying to convince us that we shouldn't like those things, and then what ended up happening? After they could not convince us not to like it, then all of a sudden they were like, well, I'm gonna go get my... Look at how the Kardashians have metamorphosized themselves. I remember reading an article that one of the sisters had turned herself into a light-skinned black woman. And I was like, this is nonsense, until I saw a picture of her and I thought she was a light-skinned black woman. So it's like they spend all of this time trying to convince us not to be a certain thing while they themselves secretly covet and want that. It wasn't until I began editing the video that I realized that I left off a really important story. There was this black male YouTuber who had become famous on YouTube about 2009. And then he went off to Vine to become even more famous there. And I remember I saw him at a red carpet function in 2014 where he was pretending not to know me, which is all good. Anyway, so he was there with this really tall, slender Caucasian female. And so I was talking with her and I, asked her what it was that she did, and I almost gagged. She had become some sort of internet web celeb herself, and she said that she had done so by teaching and doing twerk videos. And I was like, I was stunned. She was tall, she was slender, and she had no booty at all, NASA tall. And I was just there, aghast. I was taken aback because I was standing there and I was like, here's this young lady with no booty, tall and slender, doesn't have the body for twerking, doesn't even seem like she has the rhythm for it either. And I really felt bamboozled. I was like, here we are as black women really internalizing the shame of our twerking. We are dirty and less than, criticized and ostracized as being nothing but sexual objects. And here was this young lady at this red carpet function in her beautiful dress, proudly proclaiming how she is a twerk instructor. And that's when it really hit me, how we are shunning our natural given sexuality and allowing other people to criticize and ostracize us for it. Meanwhile, they take it right from underneath us, turn it into a profitable business, and make it into something much larger and greater than we thought we could. Meanwhile, we're the ones with the natural talent, the natural gift, the natural ability. It's in our bones and in our DNA, but we're ashamed. All right, now back to the video. And I'm telling you, the last piece of the puzzle to your happiness is as a woman owning your own sexuality. Own your power as a woman. Hone and harvest that power. Do what's right for you. So the two things that you can do to turn it around is, number one, think of your body as your own. If you've been thinking of your body as the property of some man that exists in the future, I urge you to know that your body is yours. It does not belong to some mystery man that exists out there in the future. Learn your body. Enjoy your body. And two, everybody doesn't have to know what it is that you do. Do what you do for you, not to announce, yeah, hoe is life, that's fine, but everybody doesn't have to know. Because believe me, men don't want to know. And speaking of men, 3, it's about time we stop taking instruction from men, because men don't really know what it is that they want. They want a virgin in the streets and a freak in the sheets. And really the only way that you can become a freak in the sheets is by learning your body, learning how to please yourself, learning how to please your partner. And okay, be a virgin in the streets. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. I remember, and I'm going to end the video on this note. I remember back in the days when I did that video, How to Catch a Husband, and I interviewed hundreds of men. I did thousands of interviews, right? And I remember I was talking to this one man, and I asked him, how did he know that his wife was right for him? This man said that he dated his wife for a year and a half, and that she did not have sex with him, and that's how he knew that his wife was for him. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Men and their dysfunctional ideas about a woman's worth being attached to her denying him sex. And I'm like, this woman. I asked him if it had ever occurred to him that she was actually having sex with someone else, and it never even occurred to him that while she's there denying herself sex and sexuality in this relationship, that she's actually, because of his own small mind, because of his own biases and prejudices, that she's over there enjoying herself with someone else because he doesn't have the capacity to enjoy sex with her and respect her. So on that note, I am out of here. I want your thoughts below. This is a really deep conversation that is very close and near and dear to my heart. And my goal for having this conversation is to have us look at things in perhaps a different way and see that the things that we've been seeing have been a certain way may not actually really be that way. It could be different than we ever thought. I love you guys very, very much. Go out there and love one another. But most importantly, what? That's right, love yourself. And loving yourself is getting to know yourself, all parts of yourself. From the crown to the root, know yourself, love yourself, and enjoy yourself. And on that note, I'm out. Tonya Tko. Make sure you subscribe to my personal mailing list so that you can always know when my videos are coming out wherever I am on social media. If you subscribe to my personal mailing list, you'll be able to get those notifications directly to your email. You can also subscribe to me here on YouTube and ring the bell to get the notifications that my videos have been published. Make sure that you leave your comments below. What are your thoughts about sex and sexuality? Are you African American, African, Afro-Caribbean? And what are your views? And what do you think contributed to those? Are the two examples that I gave spot on? Religion and the perceived lasciviousness of black women? So let me get your thoughts below. Tonya Tko, and I am out. Peace. Who. And juke our hips and dip down low. Who exuded and who? What's the word? Go and walk up the body and who. Just rhythm and just soca and calypso and oh! I started getting carried away. Let me regroup. What we have is a hodgepodge of what's been created on these squirrels.